Hey guys, John here. Today's video is about how to learn synthesis effectively, and I've used this quite a bit in not only synthesis but also learning Bitwig within the past year and a few months now. So the first one is probably the most important, at least for me, and I don't know exactly how to pronounce this, but it's called Pomodoro or something kind of similar like that. Now, the whole concept is either focus time and then you take a break. Focus time and then you take a break. Now, how we divide that up is a little bit different depending on the person. For me, I found that 25 minutes of focused work and then 10-minute break is a pretty good balance. So, what does that mean exactly? So, during these 25 minutes, what you need to do is focus entirely 100% on what you're trying to learn. So, whether that's the oscillators, the filters, maybe some modulation techniques, things like that, whatever it is that you want to focus on, those 25 minutes, don't look at your phone, don't browse the internet, don't look at other tabs, don't watch YouTube. Turn everything off and focus entirely on what you're trying to learn for those 25 minutes entirely. Now, once that timer is finished, once it goes off after that 25 minutes, then take about a 5 to 10 minute break. For me, like I said, 10 is pretty good. And during the time, maybe get up, walk around. Do not think about what you're trying to learn. Try to get it a little bit out of your head and take a break. Maybe that's going to be the time where you browse your phone or watch a YouTube video or something kind of like that. And then once those 10 minutes are up, then you go back to it to another 25 minutes and then kind of repeat. Now, I generally try to do that maybe 2 or 3 repetitions for something that I'm trying to learn, and it's super super effective. And you're going to start to realize how fast that 25 minutes goes and also how fast that break goes, and before you know it, you're going to already be like 45 minutes to an hour into learning something. So definitely try to apply that technique. I think it actually works pretty good. And maybe if you have kind of a busy life or something like that, there's a lot going on, you could just ask maybe someone around you, hey, just don't bother me for 25 minutes, let me just focus on something. And that's a relatively short amount of time. So yeah, something to think about. That's a really important one, which is kind of why it's number one. Okay, so number two is immediately applying what you learn in different ways. So let's say you're watching a tutorial video about filters, or maybe on one of my channels or something like that, and you're watching, okay, this is how the filter works. I got it. Actually apply that, because our brains obviously try to trick us, because once we think, okay, I know what to do, I understand what's happening, he's clicking the filter and doing a little modulation, got it. But not necessarily. Our brain's kind of tricking us into thinking that we know something when we probably don't really know it as well as we should. So in those kind of situations, maybe pause the video, go to your synth or whatever you're trying to learn and experiment and actually implement what we're doing. So for example, let's say we're talking about filters, right? So we have something kind of like this here. We're looking at this slow pass 12. Maybe we're doing some filter sweeps like that. And right after that happens, go into your synth and then load up that same filter and start playing around with it, start doing some different modulations and applying it in different types of ways. So maybe let's say in the tutorial, we're doing a saw wave into the filter. So maybe for you, you can send a square wave into it. See how that sounds. Maybe add some unison onto that guy. See how the resonance sounds for the different filter sweeps. So essentially, once we learn something, whatever it is, whether we're working on the ARP or maybe some different types of modulation shapes here in the mod envelopes or something like that, pause the video and kind of go experiment yourself with it and try to apply it in many different ways, because it's one thing to watch someone do something and it's another thing to entirely do it yourself. You can watch videos on how people play sports or hockey or basketball or something like that, but until you're actually doing it yourself, you can never actually learn something 100%. So it's something to keep in the back of your mind. Now, number three is also important. It's called spaced repetition. So what does that exactly mean? So let's say on Monday, we learn about filters and we're kind of playing around with the different modules, the different filters in here. And cool, we get it. And we feel like we understand it. That's awesome. And then you move into another category. Maybe we're working on making different waveforms or something kind of like that, or experimenting through different effects, things like that. So spaced repetition, maybe in a couple days or something like that, visit exactly what you were doing on that Monday with these filters and then kind of get a refresher, because you kind of need some space in between learning things and then coming back to it to really solidify that into your long-term memory. So that's really important. Whatever it is you're doing, learn it, learn as good as you can, and then take a break, do something else, maybe focus on a different area, and then always come back to what you already learned. Now, you can apply that too if you're reading a book about something, or reading how filters work, or just sound design in general. Once you kind of got that in your head, focus on something else and then come back to that at a later time and kind of just repaint it. It's kind of like putting paint, another layer of paint on a wall or something kind of like that. Okay, so number four is going to be finding the weak points in your workflow, whatever that is. So let's say, for example, I'm pretty good at doing some unison, some filtering, and then maybe let's put this through an ARP. So we have something kind of like this here. Now let's say I can make some really cool waveforms, but I'm not really good at dialing in some delays. So let's bring in a delay here. So we bring in a delay, we're saying, okay, I don't really know what to do. We have ping pong. Okay, that's cool. I don't really know what other settings there are. So if that's the case, maybe spend some time and really focus on these delays. Really try to understand, okay, what's the difference of stereo versus crossover versus ping pong? How do these different types of delays sound to our ears, or the different timings here? What does a regular eighth note sound like in comparison to a dotted eighth note? What if we change a little bit of the feedback? What if we do some bit rate over here? Maybe we do some modulate. So the whole concept of this here is basically whatever our weak point is, really try to spend some time and focus on that and kind of build that up to the skill level of our other things. Because we might understand filters or the amp section pretty well. Or for example, if we go here to initialize, now, let's say we know a lot about the synthesizer, but we don't really jump into the mod envelopes too much. So maybe spend some time in creating some different shapes and putting these shapes on maybe your filter or different not sources, but different destinations from this source to kind of really see how it goes. Maybe you can make some interesting shape here and use that as a volume for maybe an oscillator or for the whole amp as well. So whatever weak points that you have, really kind of focus on that. Maybe it's the modulation matrix. I know for different synthesizers, those can be a little bit more complex or more intimidating. So just spend some time just hammering out the mod modulation matrix, because a lot of the times we try to kind of shy away from what we don't know and it gets frustrating. But once you just keep tackling that every single time, it's going to be much easier, and maybe you can kind of weave those in together. So with all these different tips, you could say, maybe my weak point is the mod matrix. So for the next couple days, spend 25 minutes focused time on just looking at the mod matrix, maybe load up some different presets and see how those function and see what those do and move the sliders around, read what they say on the macros, and play with the macro knobs, and then take a 10-minute break and then come back to it and then do some spaced repetition and so on and so forth. So that's a really, really helpful thing to do. Now, number 5. Okay, so this one kind of ties in with some of the others, but really at the end of the day, you have to put in the work. You cannot sit there and watch video after video after video and think that you understand something without physically opening up your computer or turning it on, putting your headphones on, turning your speakers on, and turning dials and making patches. That's the most probably important. I mean, they're all important, but you have to put in the work. You have to put in the time. If I wanted to learn any other skill in the world, if I wanted to become a hockey player, I can't just sit down and watch instructions on how to play hockey on a professional level and then expect myself one day to just go out and play hockey with the professional players. It just doesn't work like that. You have to put in the time, you have to put in the work. Now there's some quote, and I forget where it comes from, but it's basically when someone says, oh, this person is talented or whatnot, or they're good at something, and they just see the public version of that. They don't see all the hours of their private life that they've dedicated to learning something, all the mistakes that they made, or whether it's sound design, all the bad patches we've made, all the stupid sounding things, everything. I mean, that's cool, but let's trash it. But that's not wasted time. That's figuring out how not to make a patch, like the whole Edison thing. He's like, I figured out 100 ways not to make a light bulb. Whether that quote's even true, it's kind of a cool concept. So whether we make stupid patches or stupid modulation shapes, we're starting to figure out what not to do that brings us closer to what we should do or what we like to do. So those are some 5 things. So if we recap those real quick before we end this off here, the Pomodoro, however you pronounce that word, focus time and then break. So for me, 25 minutes focus time and 10 minutes break works well for me. You might want to try to change those values up a little bit to kind of match your personality a little bit, but definitely adhere to that. For those focus times, do not do anything else except that. Number 2 is immediately applying what you learn. You're watching a video about reverbs, then pause the video, open up your reverb, and then start practicing. Do it exactly at that moment. Right when you learn something, apply that knowledge and do it a couple times. Number 3 is that spaced repetition. Let's say you're doing that reverb on a Tuesday, and then once the next Tuesday comes around, do the same thing over and over and over again, and just keep doing the same thing and spacing it and so on and so forth. Okay. Number 4 is gonna be identify those weak points. So maybe you suck at LFOs or you suck at, I don't know, some type of effect that you kinda wanna get good at, or maybe you suck at sequences or ARPs or something like that. Just focus on that as much as you can and kinda build that skill level up to how good you are with filters or how good you are with maybe setting up other things in the synth. I don't know, but find your weak points and really target those and hit those hard. And then number 5, put in the work. You got to put in the hours. You have to do it. That's going to be the only way to grow. And then I guess before we close this video out, one of the bonus ones I do say quite often in some other videos, you have to be somewhat healthy. So get a good amount of sleep, eat good food, drink a lot of water, and feel rested. You don't want to come do sound design or something that you want to learn super late at night when you're hungry, you're tired, you might be hangry. It's just not going to be good. If you're frustrated, that's just not a good feeling to try to get through it. If you do feel frustrated, take a break and come back to it when you feel a little bit better. So these concepts were more kind of geared towards sound design and for me personally learning Bitwig for the year and some months, but this can apply to anything whether you want to learn, I don't know, woodworking or something like that. You can apply these exact same things and still get further. So time is a finite resource. So following these steps I found for myself, I can learn whatever it is I want to learn. It just takes time and kind of really putting in the work and following these steps. So hopefully that helps you out. Thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next one.